might be, yeah, so we're live on YouTube. Please enjoy your session.
Hello, everybody. This is the second session of our last day, and it's on security proofs. And I'm Elena Andreeva, and my co-chairs are Bart Menning and Kazuhiko Minamatsu. And the first talk is on iterative block ciphers from tweakable block ciphers with long tweaks. And the talk is going to be given by Tetsu Iwata. So Tetsu, if you can join us.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I'm presenting a joint work with Ryota Nakamichi. Sorry. So there are many constructions of tweakable block cipher from block ciphers. We have LRW1, LRW2, and XCX constructions, and many others. So we know how to construct tweakable block cipher from tweakable block ciphers, from block ciphers. And we will write this as NT-TBC and this as NBC. The opposite direction of constructing a block cipher from tweakable block ciphers was initiated by Minematsu at FSE 2009. And there are also iterative constructions by Kovan et al. And by Minematsu. So we have a tweakable block cipher, and we want to construct a block cipher with large block length. And we assume that the tweak length is tau n bits. So we have tau lines of n bits as a tweak, and we focus on iterative constructions of block ciphers with provable security, and we consider a strong pseudorandom permutation as the security notion. So this is a construction by Kovan et al., and this is a 2NBC from NTBCs, where the distilled PI is a key tweakable block cipher with Ki, and with 2 rounds, it has birthday bound security, and with 3 rounds, it has beyond birthday bound security. So this is a construction of Minematsu, and this is a DNBC with n tau n TBCs, where D is tau plus 1 and tau is at least 1. So here we consider a TBC with long tweaks, and in the figure, tau is 2 and D is 3. So we have 2 lines here, and the middle part has D rounds, and G1 and G2 are key permutations that satisfy certain combinatorial requirements. And one of the examples is that G1 is the D round construction itself, and G2 can also be the D round construction. So in this case, we have D rounds here, D rounds in the middle, and D rounds here. So we have a 3 D round construction in total. And with this construction, the construction has this very strong security bound. So this is a summary so far. And in this paper, we have 3 results. Theorem 1 shows that the security of Minematsu's construction remains the same, even if we reduce the number of rounds by 2. Theorem 2 shows that with D plus L rounds, where L is between 1 and D minus 1, we have this security bound, provided that Q is at most 2 to the n. So theorem 2 says that if the number of queries is at most 2 to the n, then beyond birthday bound security is achieved as low as D plus 1 rounds when L is equal to 1, and the security exponentially improves by adding rounds up to 2D minus 1 rounds. Theorem 3 is the birthday bound security with D rounds, and there is a matching attack for it. So this bound is tight. Okay, about the implication. Assume that we have skinny with 128-bit blocks, 256-bit tweaks, and 128-bit keys, or 384-bit tweak key with R rounds, and assume that it is perfectly secure. Then we have a 384 BC with 128 times R bit keys, and with 9 rounds, Minematsu showed this security bound, and theorem 1 says that we have the same security bound with 7 rounds. Theorem 2 says that with 5 rounds, we still have the same security bound, provided that the number of queries is at most 2 to the 128. Theorem 2 also says that with 4 rounds, we have 128-bit security, and Theorem 3 shows the birthday bound security with 3 rounds. Okay, so to conclude, in this work, we proved these 3 theorems, and as open questions, we do not know if the condition on the number of queries can be removed from Theorem 2. And the tightness of theorems 1 and 2 is open, and we think generalization to enciphering schemes is interesting. And finally, the analysis in the indifferentiability framework would be interesting. And for this problem, we made some progress, and this will be presented in 15 minutes. So please check it. And with that, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tetsu, for the nice talk. The next talk in this session is on the security of symmetric primitives against key-correlated attacks. And the talk is going to be given by Aisling Connolly.
Hello, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
it's nice to see you, even if you are just names on a list in Zoom, but it's a shame we can't be in Greece, but hello anyway. So yes, I'll talk about security of symmetric primitives. And whenever we consider security, there are the standard CPA, CCA notions, or PRP, SPRP for block ciphers. But there are also some other notions of security that try to model the real world a bit more closely. And one of them being the related key setting, which we usually model with some function phi, which takes a key k and outputs a related key, which we use then to encrypt a message. And these related key settings can arise either naturally in key scheduling or via attacks through fault injections or something like this. Related key, it's modeled via an adversary interacting with the encryption and decryption oracle, where encryption oracle takes as input this function phi, which generates the related key, which is then used to encrypt the message, and similar for decryption. This security is kind of retained as long as this function phi doesn't have clause and if the keys are unpredictable. And another security notion, kind of cousin of this, is the key-dependent message setting, where instead of phi, we have now this function psi, which takes the key k star and outputs a message, key-dependent message, m, which is then encrypted under the key from which it's derived, k, and outputs a ciphertext. So this arises in things like disk encryption. If your key is stored on the disk that you want to encrypt with that key, then you run into this circular security issue. And this is modeled similarly to before, where an adversary interacts with an encryption and decryption oracle, except now instead of querying messages, the adversary will query this psi, which will take the key and generate key-dependent messages. And similarly to before, this security is retained as long as psi doesn't have clause. And so here in this work, we wanted to give a concrete treatment of RK and KDM together under the one kind of umbrella for symmetric primitives. And so that's what we do. How might that look? So now we have a single function xi, which takes the key k star, and it generates a correlated key and message pair. So in this setting, everything is correlated. And so it's, yeah, you can think of this as kind of getting RKA and KDM in one shot. How does security look? Similar to before, we modeled it by an adversary interacting with encryption and decryption oracles. Here, the encryption oracle takes the function xi, and which takes k star, and outputs a key correlated key message pair, and similar for decryption. As before, we require this xi to be claw-free and key unpredictable, as is as would be expected, given that these are needed for KDM and RKA. But there's one more property that we need in this case, which we call XKCD. So what we need here, and like, why do we need this essentially? So we don't want to decrypt stuff that has been encrypted, and we don't want to encrypt stuff that has been decrypted. And so in order to detect that and return perp if there are certain kind of bad queries by the adversary, we need to be able to detect clause in keys that occur across algorithms. So as you can see, let's say with the KC Eng Oracle, which takes XIE, it will generate a key and a message pair. And similarly with KC Dec, it will generate a key and ciphertext correlated with the key. And so these two keys that are generated across the algorithms shouldn't have clause. We just need to be able to detect this so that we can know when to perp. We don't require cross-key claw freeness in this case, because we don't want to restrict the adversary too much. So with those three properties, the first kind of main result is that the ideal cipher is KC CCA secure if we have key unpredictability, claw freeness, and this XKCD property on the two correlation derivation function sets. Another result is that we looked at Evan Mansour, and we saw that even though it's 2 rounds are sufficient for RKA and KDM security, we give an attack showing that 2 rounds are not sufficient for KC CPA security, but 3 rounds are, given independent permutations and repeated keys. So 3 rounds are necessary and sufficient for a KC CCA security. So it's even better than the CPA in the 2-round case. And finally, the last result in the paper is that we looked at authenticated encryption, and we show that, so there's a generic transform from Bellari and Kiel VD in 2011, where they were looking at key-dependent messages, and they gave a hash with nonce transform, essentially, where you just hash the key with the nonce. And this is a generic transform to transform any authenticated encryption scheme into a key-dependent message secure authenticated encryption scheme. Similarly, it works here. So actually, you can get KCA secure AE-AD scheme with the hash with nonce transform, as long as the correlation derivation functions are key unpredictable. And so that's essentially it. I refer you to the paper, which is, oh, this is wrong, 2019, 1000 actually. And if you have any questions, you can find our details there, or you can shout at me on Twitter. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Aisling. Thank you for the nice talk. And we move on. And the next talk is on improved security bounds for generalized high-scale networks. And the talk is going to be given by Yaobin Shen. We can't hear you at the moment, Yaobin.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We see your screen and we can hear you at the moment now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for introduction. And this is Yaobin Shen, a PhD student in ZTU. And today our talk is improved security bound for generalized fast-tail network. And this is a joint work with Chunguo, Lei Wang. And the fast-tail network is one of the most popular ways to design a block cipher. It iterates several times over a fast-tail permutation. And the fast-tail permutation usually maps a 2-bit input to a 2-bit output via n-bit round function. This figure is the illustration of the classical fast-tail. In classical fast-tail, the left part and the right part of the input has the same size, less n-bit. There are several ways to generalize a classical fast-tail network. By replacing the round function with expanding or constructing one, we can obtain the unbalanced fast-tail. By using the expanding and constructing round function in an alternate manner, we can obtain alternating fast-tail. By partitioning the input into more than 2 blocks, we can obtain the 3 kinds of multi-line fast-tail. That's type 1 fast-tail, type 2 fast-tail, and type 3 fast-tail. And by using the trackable block cipher as the underlying primitive, we can obtain the TBC-based fast-tail. There are also some important applications of the fast-tail network. The well-known block cipher uses the classical facetail network. The skip-GF block cipher uses the unbalanced facetail. And the bear and lion block cipher and also the former preserving encryption use the alternating facetail. The class 256 RC6 mask use the type 1 and type 2, type 3 facetail network respectively. And the TBC-based facetail can be used to construct double-length stick-pro block cipher. For unbalanced alternating type 1, type 2, type 3 facetail, there are serious results that prove that this kind of facetail can achieve the birthday bound security. Partnering also proved that the unbalanced facetail are beyond birthday bound secure. Hong and RWES proved that all these facetail can achieve the asymptotically MBA security. More concretely, in Hong and RWES result, they proved that these facetail are CCA secure up to the 2n times 1 minus epsilon query for an epsilon greater than 0. The drawback of this bound is that it requires a large number of bounds for asymptotically MBA security. On the other hand, for the TBC-based facetail by Coren et al., 3 rounds are proved to have MBA security. However, the input side to the underlying tick-pro presentation is n plus w, which is greater than 2n. So with respect to the input size, MBA security for this construction is only birthday type. For our contribution, we improve the security bound for this generalized facetail network. For unbalanced alternating type 1, type 2, and type 3 facetail, we improve the coupling analysis of Hong and RWES. We prove that this construction can achieve almost the same security bound with the nearly half number of rounds. And this table summarizes the improved bounds for this generalized facetail network. And for the TBC-based facetail, we give the first coupling analysis. And we prove this construction can achieve the 2 MB security with enough number of rounds. This table is the comparison between Coren et al.'s bound and our bound. Note that the Coren et al. Proved that 3 rounds of this construction can achieve the MB security. And our results show that with enough number of rounds, this construction can indeed achieve the 2 MB security. We now describe some crucial points behind the improvement. In Hong RWES proof, they use the 2B round in each coupling trail to guarantee that the probability of coupling fails is small. But we find that actually B round are already enough for this purpose. We only need to rely on the readiness of the output after the first B round. And thus, by using this idea, we can reduce the number of rounds in each or following coupling trails. And by using a similar idea, we can improve the security bound for alternating type 1, type 2, and type 3 facetail. And for the TBC-based facetail, we need to define true bad events. This case will be much complicated. These 2 bad events involve both the first cipher and the second cipher. And we will do the coupling according to the first subcases. And when none of the 2 bad events happens, the output of the BI plus 1 and the DI plus 1, the distribution of these true values are exactly the same. So we can assign the value of BI plus 1 to the DI plus 1. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. So the next talk is Key Assignment Schemes with Authenticated Encryption Revisited. It's a talk from Jeroen Pijnenburg and Bertram Buttering, and Jeroen will give the talk, I think, right?
Yes, that's correct. I assume you can see the screen.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you for the introduction. So our paper is about access control, and it's basically about protecting resources or files, documents, whatever you have from unauthorized access by users. Obviously, you also want some users to be able to access this, otherwise you could just delete all your files. So what intuitively people do in practice is they combine a key assignment scheme that assigns a key or key material to a user such that they can derive the key. And then this key will subsequently be used with authenticated encryption to either encrypt or decrypt such files. And we formally analyze this combination, this combined primitive, and we define security models for this. But we also identified a second use case where authenticated encryption does not satisfy the security requirement. So first of all, we had the instance where we have a read-write enforcement scheme. And this scenario is basically just, you can think of it as a company, and certain people in the company are required to read the file. They make some changes to the file, they update it, they write to it again, and then the next day a new person looks at this file. So in this scenario, we basically can use the authenticated encryption, and it works out well. So you use the key assignment scheme to assign keys to people that should be able to read, write this file, and the other people that are not allowed to access this file, they should not be able to derive the key. Now, in the other scenario, we have a read-only enforcement scheme. And what's different here is that all files are specified at startup. And certain people are allowed to access this file, but they're only allowed to read the file. So no one can write to the file. No one can make changes. And it should be obvious that authenticated encryption is now not a sufficient primitive to solve this problem. Because if you simply derive a key for each user to access this file, then if they can decrypt the file, clearly they can also use the key to encrypt a new file and save it. And then the next user would simply decrypt the new file, and it would all work out perfectly. So what we did instead is independently, we did some work that we presented at SRX 2020, where we talk about securely outsourcing storage. And what this primitive does is that even when the key is leaked, it still maintains integrity. So if the key is leaked, the primitive would lose confidentiality. We could not avoid that, but it maintains integrity. And that is kind of exactly what we need here, because one can consider that key is leaked to the people that should be able to access this file. So they can read this file, but they cannot write to it because this primitive maintains integrity. And that is exactly the solution that we needed here for our read-only enforcement scheme. So this paper was basically a lot about defining the security models and proving security formally. And I didn't want to go into these models, but I thought briefly discuss some modeling assumptions we made would be interesting. So we assumed that any algorithm may fail and a game oracle would forward this error. So that means, for example, if the adversary would query the decryption oracle in the game, then the decryption oracle runs the decryption algorithm, but now this algorithm may fail. And instead of assuming that the game then will just output a bot symbol or something, we actually just forward the error that is output by the algorithm. Now, we're not saying that the algorithm should specify error messages, but if it does, then the adversary should learn about this, because that's also what happens in practice if an adversary would actually run this algorithm in the real world. And then it may happen that, say, an algorithm is decrypting a ciphertext for authenticated encryption, and the tag doesn't verify. And if it outputs a silly error message saying like, oh, I failed because the first bit of the tag doesn't match, then the game oracle will forward this error to the adversary. And then the adversary can use this information to break the game, because it can adaptively query, it can use this information, it might win the security game. And I note that in our model, such an algorithm would be insecure. And I think that's a crucial difference with standard models that just say, oh, output bot, because in such a model, the adversary would not learn about the error messages. And then such an algorithm that would leak information through its error messages would be proven secure in other models, while in our model, we explicitly exclude such algorithms. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Jeroen, for the presentation. Let's go to the next one. Beyond birthday bound secure cryptographic permutations from ideal ciphers with long tweaks. And it's a paper from Hiroyota Nakamichi and Tatsu will give the talk.
Okay, thank you very much. So do you see my screen and my voice?
Yes,
is okay?
we see and hear you and your screen.
Thank you. So, cryptographic permutation is a non-keyed public permutation, and we will write DNCP for cryptographic permutation over DN bits, like this one. And the ideal cipher is an ideally secure block cipher. And we will write kappa n NIC for an n-bit ideal cipher with kappa n bit keys, like this one. And we want to construct a cryptographic permutation from ideal ciphers. And there are provable security results by Coran et al. And Guo and Lin. So this is a construction by Coran et al. And this is a 2NCP from NN ideal ciphers. And the security was analyzed in the indifferentiability framework. And with 2 rounds, this construction is insecure. But with 3 rounds, it has birthday bound security. This is a construction by Guo and Lin. This is a DNCP from kappa n NICs, where D is kappa plus 1. So here are D lines, and we have kappa lines for the key. And so here we consider the ideal ciphers with long keys. And again, in the indifferentiability framework, with 2D minus 2 rounds, the construction is insecure. And with 2D minus 1 rounds, it has birthday bound security. About the relation to the previous work by Minematsu and the talk just I have given, the primitive is a keyed tweakable block cipher. So the adversary doesn't have access to to the primitive, and the security was analyzed in the indistinguishability framework. In this paper, the primitive is an ideal cipher. So the adversary has access to the primitive, and we analyze the security in the indifferentiability framework. Right, this is the summary so far. And in the previous results, Q is at most 2 to the n over 2. So it has birthday bound security. And the natural question is whether we have a construction with stronger security, namely if we have a beyond birthday bound construction with a beyond birthday bound security. So for this 2n-bit construction, by adding 2 more rounds to Kogan et al.'s construction, we have the full n-bit security. For the dn-bit construction, by adding 2 more rounds to Guo and Lin's construction, we have full n-bit security. And in the general case of 2d plus 2l minus 1 rounds, where l is between 1 and d minus 1, we have this security bound, provided that Q is at most 2 to the n. So actually, these 2 results are the special cases of this general case, because this one corresponds to these parameters, and this one corresponds to the case that L is equal to 1. So as far as we know, our result is the first cryptographic permutation that is built from n-bit ideal ciphers and has a full n-bit indifferentiability security bound. In the paper, we illustrate the practical implication, but I will not explain all the details here. But basically, the practical implication is limited from the efficiency viewpoint. But we can prove these strong security bounds. Okay, so in this paper, we showed this result, and as open questions, the tightness is not known. For instance, we do not know if there is a 2 to the n attack against a 2NCP construction with 5 rounds. We do not know if the condition can be removed from our theorem, and the tightness on the number of rounds is also not known. For instance, we do not know the security of 2NCP with 4 rounds. And finally, this paper and previous results assume independent ideal ciphers. And the security of a cryptographic permutation obtained from one ideal cipher is an interesting question. Okay, that's the end of my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Tatsu. Let's go to the last talk of this session, which is Beyond Birthday Bound Security for 4-round linear substitution permutation networks. It's a work of Jungo Meijing Wang, Weia Wang, and Jijing Wen. I hope I didn't mispronounce too many names. And the first speaker, the first author will give, the first author in this list will give the talk.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. I'm Yuan Gao. In this paper, we prove that the 4-round SPN with a linear diffusion layer is secure up to 2 to 2n divided by 3 queries beyond the birthday bound, where n is the size of the idealized S boxes, as long as the 4 S boxes S1, S2, S3, S4 used in the 4 rounds are independent public random permutations. The round case K0 to K4 are uniform and independent, and the diffusion layer T is a linear permutation with some special combinatorial properties. Our result is about the structure of block ciphers. Modern block ciphers mostly follow 2 structures. One choice is the Fishtail networks and their generalizations. In its basic form, the Fishtail network applies a domain preserving function on half of the data, as in this picture. This can be generalized to using compression functions, using expansion functions, and using smaller functions. The other structure is the SP network. It starts with a set of public T-less S boxes and extends it to a K permutation on Wn bit inputs by iterating a substitution step, that is, break down the Wn bit inputs into W disjoint chunks of n bits and evaluate an S box on each chunk, plus a permutation step, that is, apply a K permutation on the whole Wn bit states, which is also applied to the plaintext before the first round. Assuming PRF-based S boxes, Iwata and Kurosawa proved PRP security for serpent-like SP network models with such secret S boxes on FSE 2000. And Mills and Viola proved chosen plaintext security for linear SPN with PRP S boxes, 0 free permutations, and more than 2 rounds in Crypto 2012. By 0 free, we mean the linear layer has no 0 entry. Assuming public S boxes, Dodis et al. In Crypto 2018 repopularized this line of work. They show that for any W, the 3-round linear SPNs are n divided by 2-bit SPRP secure, and even a 1-round non-linear SPN can be secure if appropriate Kate permutation are used. Cogliati and Lee in Crypto 2018 make SPN tweakable by allowing tweakable permutation in the permutation layer and make their results as tweakable block ciphers. They show that beyond the birthday bound security for 2-round nonlinear SPN with independent S boxes and independent round case, and 2 T-round nonlinear SPNs are also secure as long as the number of adversary queries is well below 2 to Tn divided by T plus 1. Now we discuss what we do. With more than 2 rounds, nonlinear SPNs could ensure beyond birthday bound security, but the security of more practical relevant linear SPNs is only proved up to birthday bound at 3 rounds. So we focus on linear SPNs with independent S boxes and independent round case and try to break the birthday barrier. So we prove if the round case K0 to K4 are uniform and independent and the diffusion layer T is second order zeros free, then the single user attack advantage has this bound and the multi-user attack advantage has this one. Both of them are beyond the birthday bound. Here is a summary of the probable results on SP networks. The first column indicates the number of runs in the model, and the second column indicates how many s-boxes are used in the model and whether they are secret or public. Regarding security, PRF, PRP, SPRP, TSPRP, which is Twig-Ball strong field random permutation, indicates the security model. SU and MU indicates if it is in the single or multi-user setting, while the header term indicates the concrete probable bounds. We remark that the security for T-round linear SPN with general T remains open, and whether twigs can be mixed into the construction via auxing to ensure beyond birthday bound security remains unknown. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I think Kazu takes over now.
Yeah. So okay. So let's talk over. So let's move to the question Q&A session. And yeah, let's see with a number of questions. Yeah. So actually the first one is on mine to test the first talk. So in my paper, 2015 DCC, I made it by first abstract it's actually 3-layer construction. On the top and the bottom are some non-cryptographic key permutation, and the middle layer consists of the TBC-based file store. And I proved it that this is secure, and the next step is how to instantiate these universal hash-like permutation using the TBC-based file store. So my question is whether if your result is generalized to that direction.
Okay. Okay, thank you for asking. So let me share the screen if I can. Okay. So I think the screen is shared, I think. So this is your original construction. And so our security proof follows the coefficient H technique, and we release the internal variables, and we compute the collision, probability of the collision by using the randomness of the internal variables. And I think we can view our results in that way. We didn't do it because we wanted to see how the security scales depending on the number of rounds. But I think we can abstract the construction in your way and express the results by using G1 and middle part and G2. I think that's a possible direction.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, the second question is from Elna to Ashling. So the question is where is the key KC setting rare bound?
Sorry, I was typing answers. So whenever you want to encrypt key-dependent messages under related keys, you will fall into the key correlated setting. So for example, if you want to do disk encryption with tweakable block ciphers or something like this, you will end up in the key-dependent message setting and the related key setting. Or if, let's say, you want to do disk encryption and an adversary can tamper with the keys a bit, this is also the same kind of thing. So anytime, or indeed, if you want to just play with, ideal properties, you will also maybe want to look at the key correlated setting.
Thank you. And okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next question is from Bart to test the fast talk. So you seem to be using independent keys for each round. What's possible if only a single key is used?
Okay. Actually, this is, I think it's an interesting open question. The proof will be very different. At the same time, I'm not sure if we can come up with the attack with the same number of rounds. So, so the question was, what's possibility if we, okay, I can imagine both directions. The proof might be possible, or maybe you can attack. So I really don't have the idea. I think it's an interesting question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Bart has also the question to the Iceling. You have a separation of even Mansur, and the 3 rounds are necessary and sufficient, despite that the 2 rounds are related key and key dependent message secure. So how is this separation caused? Does it suggest that your definition is too strong?
So this is maybe a matter of discussion, because I guess you could ask if 2 rounds of Evan Mansur are too weak. So first of all, the separation happens because everything depends on the keys. You can kind of come up with a situation where the key correlated key and the correlation on the key and the correlation on the message actually cancel out. And so you can end up encrypting the key under the key and then decrypting and getting the key in the clear. Is it too strong? I mean, I don't think so. You know, there are RK attacks against 1 round Evan Mansur. So then if you look at 2 round Evan Mansur where you get RK, you can say, is 2 rounds too much? And then, well, no. And so in one sense, like the thing that I, kind of reflecting on this a bit, for me, it's nice because everything is correlated and it's kind of, let's say in the ideal cipher model, the kind of closest you can get to indifferentiability with some sort of, understanding of reality, if that makes sense. And so with this, you only need 3 rounds. And for me, I think that's actually kind of good. And you get a strong notion of security and you get RK and KDM in one shot. And yeah, so I think it's not too bad.
But 2 rounds also give RK and KDM in one shot.
But so we also have a separation that shows that KCA is strictly stronger. So if you have RK and KDM at the same time, you can still mount KCA attacks. So
yes, but the question then is, it is strictly stronger, but is there a use case where this attack actually happens, for instance?
So
or is it just a consequence of the fact that you unified the model?
I think it can happen because as we saw, let's say with this XKCD property, not everything is taken care of with RK and KDM. So I think, and it doesn't seem completely unreasonable to me that this could actually arise in practice. Because we do have key dependent message attacks and we do have related key attacks and they can be mounted together. And so in that sense, I kind of feel like this is not too unreasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, maybe it's better to move to my question to Iceling too. I have 2 questions related to the first one is related to the Bart question. So my question is simple. How do you think about the possibility if the 2 round Ibermansur uses the independent keys? I guess your result uses a single key.
So yeah, we did, but there's with independent keys, 2 rounds don't even get you RK security. So there's no hope for KCA in that case.
Okay. Yeah. And the second question is because you have a result on the idea cipher model, and I think that the idea cipher model is whatever we can the strongest cipher we can imagine. So that means that I wonder if the XKCD property is an unavoidable property for defining the key correlation attack.
Yeah, I was
How do you
thinking
think
about
about
it. And yeah, it's thanks for all the questions, by the way. It's nice that you're taking interest. So yeah, I was thinking about this. I think maybe, so, I mean, my first initial answer is yes, it would be needed, because XKCD is just a sort of variant of claw-freeness, which is needed for RK and KDA anyway. Except in this case, we just need to keep in consistency across the encryption and decryption algorithms. Maybe not XKCD itself, but something similar. Maybe there's a different proof technique that can get you out of using this, but you will need some sort of claw-freeness across encryption and decryption anyway. So yeah, I think it will be needed.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Okay. So the next question is from Elena to Yaobin. Okay. So it's, do you think that applying the chi-square method might allow you to prove more efficient constructions?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I think it's possible because the coupling technique is useful to analyze many wrong construction, but it usually costs many wrong to achieve a good security bound. So to give a more efficient construction, I think the chi-square or such as the edge coefficient may help, because in the coupling technique we usually need to prove the NCPA security and then using the composition lemma to obtain the CCA security. But for the chi-square and edge coefficient, we can directly give a proof for the CCA security, and also we can define more dedicated bad event according to the construction. So I think it is a good open problem to analyze the less wrong construction for this generalized festival network. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And there's also question from Bart to the second talk. So dedicated cryptographic primitives are typically already much larger than tweakable block ciphers. So, for example, the Keccak permutation has a 1600-bit state. If you instantiate it with a tweakable block cipher in the bit state, you get the 1600-bit security, but you need to make quite some TBC calls. So can you elaborate on your view on the relevance of this construction?
Okay, thank you for asking this big question. Okay. First of all, the security you get would be, it depends on how many times you iterate the tweakable block, the idle cipher. But if your idle cipher has, say, 128-bit, then yeah, depending on the number of rounds, you get 64 bits or 128-bit or 256-bit or up to, I think, the birthday of the entire state. And this construction will not give us efficient construction in practice. And I fully agree with that. And actually, I think this is not for trying to propose a practically efficient solution, but I think this is more to see a fundamental problem, to see the relation between the existence of a secure public random permutation and the existence of a secure block cipher. And so for that, I think we made progress. And if we want to extract some practical interpretation from our results, then I think, well, for instance, when we use Ruby-Lakoff theory to construct a block cipher as a primitive, we never use it as a for round, and we don't use the round function as a pseudo-random function. In practice, when we use a primitive, the round function is much weaker, and we add rounds to get the efficiency. But really, lack of steering tells us the soundness of the entire structure. So I think if we apply our result into the practice, then I think it should be taken as the proof for the soundness of the structure. And we may apply a very weak ideal cipher to each round and add rounds to have some practically efficient cryptographic permutation. So I think it can be used as a starting point of designing a practical one, but this result itself doesn't provide a good solution. I agree.
Okay, so technically, you for instance, you can use this construction to build a dedicated permutation with this construction in mind. Okay, thanks for the answer. I think it's a nice answer.
Okay, so the next question from Elena to Yuan. Questions are made so far already from them or moderated, so that perhaps please feel free to question. Okay, anyway, from Elena to Yuan, so very nice work first. Do you think there is some room for relaxations on the independence of the S boxes or the round keys, even at the cost of increasing the rounds to achieve similar bounds? Yuan, could you answer? Yuan, are you all right?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'm sorry, there is something wrong with her device, I guess.
No problem.
As a corresponding author, may I answer this question for her? You mean use dependent boxes? Dependent boxes. I think it should be easier to analyze. It should be easier to analyze with dependent keys, correlated round keys, and we just apply the sum capture lemma. But if we want to use the same S box in each round, I think the proof could go through, but it would, yeah. It will be very complicated, maybe. I guess it might be as complicated as the paper minimizing the 2-round even measure, I guess. But that should be possible. And with more rounds, maybe a coupling analysis could give rise to a sympathetically optimal bound as the analysis for the generalized Python networks and something like this. And but the more attractive problem is if it is possible to prove 2n divided by 3 bit security for 3-round linear SP network. I think this one would be more attractive and also more challenging, I guess.
Can you repeat what would be more attractive? Because I didn't really understand.
My feeling is that if it is possible to prove 2n divided by 3 bit security for 3-round SP network with linear layers, this one could be more attractive and challenging. Maybe some new proof technique are required because that's a feeling. 3-round.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, any other questions? I think so. Yeah, all questions so far posted to the chat has been answered. We have around 5 minutes. Yeah,
Maybe
still. So
I have to Jeroen. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't fully get what the encryption scheme is compared to authenticated encryption. So I guess this is a very fundamental thing I missed, but maybe why was that necessarily needed to replay in your setting? And maybe you can outline the differences there between encryption schemes and authenticated encryption.
Jerome, could you answer?
I'm sorry. Is this still a question for us? Sorry, we missed it. You asked if the game could be turned into an authenticated encryption. The current network is not practical for this purpose because it uses it at least uses a WN bit key. This is different from the non-linear networks. The non-linear.
I think the question was for somebody else. I think maybe you misunderstood. It's for Jeroen Feinenberg.
So yeah, Elena's question so yeah, we're on the talk. So yeah, it's fourth talk. So yeah, I think it's yeah. I think Elena can type your question to the Drip chat so that your question is more clear.
Okay, great.
So my simple question to you, Yuan and or Chun, the last talk. So I see many lines of work on this type of the theoretical analysis of the SPN network. So do you think that we can set the ultimate goal of these lines of research? What's the ultimate result do you imagine? Say more rounds and more stronger security, but do you think if there is some certain limit or
Okay, thank you for the question. It's a good question. I think if we want to push the line forward, maybe we could try to introduce some computational hardness into the scheme and try to prove beyond the n-bit security with some computational assumption for the SP network structure. This could be, maybe this will be the next big step.
So you mentioned that beyond the n-bit security, the size of the S box. So that's what I imagine. So do you think it is achievable if we? So your answer is that it might be possible if we introduce the computational assumption. You mentioned about the computational assumption, right?
I don't know which one could work, but I had previously I had a cooperation with Yu, and we proposed a hash function with random commutations. The information theoretic security of the hash function is very weak, but using the LPN assumption, actually we proved better security than the information theoretic bound. So this might be possible. But of course, a lot of obstacles have to be overcome.
Yeah, sounds interesting. Yeah. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Okay. And also a question from Bart to you and Chun again. So in your bounds, typically n equals to 8. Small n is 8, and large n equals to 2 to the 56. And this means that the results are not practically relevant. Do you have any insight on that? It's a similar, somehow similar question. Do you have any insight on whether there will be proof techniques that can be made that can go beyond q square to q square over 2 to the 8 in this case? So I think that's a quite similar question that I made.
Yeah, that's the same one.
Bart, is it okay? Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. So and Elena type to the question to Jerome. Jerome. Sorry. Can you elaborate on the differences or similarities between the encryptment schemes and A?
Yes, so for authenticated encryption, as soon as the key becomes public, then anyone can use that key to encrypt a new message. And if you then decrypt this, it would obviously verify because it was correctly encrypted. But for an encryptment scheme, if you publish the key, then obviously anyone can still decrypt it and read the file, but no one should be able to encrypt a new file. So if the key is leaked in an encryptment scheme, you maintain integrity.
Okay.
Thank you.
And how do you instantiate such encryptment schemes then?
Sorry, couldn't hear you.
How do you instantiate, for example, as compared to
A really simple example that's not going to be as efficient is just encrypt your ciphertext and then hash it, and then you would store the hash as a tag, and then the verifier or the decryptor would first hash the ciphertext and compare if it matches the hash that it has stored, and only then it would decrypt it.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm sorry, related question. So there are, that means that so your description of encryptment is a very general one, right? Generic one. So, and
Yes.
are there any more efficient constructions that?
Yeah, so for example, the paper that I referred to that was presented at SRX, there we built an encryptment scheme with only one pass over the data. So basically what we did is a Merkle-Damgard construction, and there we use we basically use the compression function out of that. We use that to generate a sort, how should I put it? We use the output of the compression functions as key streams to encrypt the message blocks with, and the final block we use as a tag.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I guess it's 48. So yeah, maybe it's better we close the session. So thank you very much for the talks and question and answers. Yeah, and thanks for joining all of us. Yes. It's okay. Would you